Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is my first video of Caleb's Castles, and today we're looking at a website that I absolutely love. The website is called castles.nl. It's basically about castles and other fortifications in Europe and beyond. Now, basically, you have the Facebook page and search. Now, of course, I'm going to read the description. Welcome to castles.nl, or Netherlands for short. This is a personal non-commercial website, so no, this is a non-commercial website. Launched in November 1999 by an individual enthusiast. Of course, the website began with descriptions of 7 Dutch castles, and has since expanded to feature over 2,000 castles and towers, as of 2025, as of the website of 2025. The site is now note the site is regularly updated with new additions to castles or forts, like the person the guy visit the where the guy visits. As a personal project, the site, of course, castle.nl, the site focuses on structures personally visited by the creator during holidays and spare time. The definition of a castle used here includes structures with realistic defensive features built between approximately from 800 AD to 1600. Anyway, as a personal project, the site focuses on structures personally visited by the creator during additional fortifications or buildings that don't strictly meet this definition are also included based on personal interest. The website, if you visit the website, it's like a gaze here, offering concise histories of the featured castles, sprinkled with personal observations, accompanied by photos, and since 2021, often also drone photos, and sometimes also older images to provide a complete picture of the castle in question. Castles.nl thus hopes to provide a valuable resource for enthusiasts interested in castles, fortification, and history in general. While the website offers a vast collection of information and images, it is important to note that it is managed by a single individual and is not connected to any of the castles featured. For specific inquiries, if you want to visit the castle, news about bookings, opening times, or entry fees, visitors are advised to contact the official sites of the respective castles. So enjoy your visit. Alright, so as you can see, we have castles in the slight Middle East and Europe, beginning of ABC order. So first we have Albania. I think that might be a slash Middle East slash Europe country. Then Austria, a European country. Bahrain, a Middle East slash Europe country. Belgium, a European country. Croatia, a European country. Cuba, a North American country. Dutch Antilles, Caribbean country. France, a European country. Georgia, a Middle East country. Germany, a European country. Ghana, an African country. Ireland, a, a Europe country, part of the United Kingdom. Italy, European country. Luxembourg, European country. The Netherlands, European country. Oman, Middle East country. Portugal, a a European country. Qatar, a Middle East country. Slovenia, Middle East, I don't know, European country. Spain, European country. Syria, Turkey, and United Arab Emirates are all Middle East countries. United Kingdom is also a European country. So that's actually all the countries listed from ABC order from A to U. So now, of course, we're just going to start. Let's start with the Netherlands because I love the Netherlands. So in this series, we're going to review all the castles in order from A from A to from A to W. So let's begin with Amersoyen Castle. Now, note that I am speaking Dutch, but I'm not. I am a little good at the Dutch pronunciation, but bear with me here, as my Dutch is not good yet, but it's getting there. Amersoyen Castle, locally known as Kasteel Amersoyen, lies next to the village of Amersfoort in the Gelderland province in the Netherlands. Amersoyen Castle was built around 1350 near the Meuse River by the Van Harlaer family. Yeah, my Dutch is not that good, but I am pronouncing some of it right. It has a rectangular, almost square layout of four wings centered around a little courtyard with heavy round towers at its four corners. It shows similarity to other square castles like Helmond Castle and Muiden Castle or Mutterslot, and a partially remaining Radboud Castle. Amersoyen Castle is connected to the separate bailey by a bridge, and the entire site is moated. In 1386, already, the castle was taken by force by William van Guy, the Duke of Gelre. The Dukes of Gelre remained owners of the castles for 25 years. In 1412, Duke Reinald V granted the castle to his bastard son, Willem van Wachtendonck, who in 1424 sold the castle to Johann van Broeckhuysen, Lord of Wardenburg. In 1496, the Van Arkel family married into ownership of the castle. The family lived in the castle until 1694. In 1513, the castle was damaged during the siege and following occupation by Burgundian troops, led by Count Henry III of Nassau, Dillenburg, in 1574. The castle was again occupied, this time by Spanish troops. The hasty departure from the castle by the troops of Prince Willem van Oranje kept the castle from any serious damage. In 1590, however, the castle was not so lucky. It was gutted by a great fire which left it in ruins. Due to the threat of the 80 Years' War, the rebuilding of the castle didn't start until 1648. The rebuilding took 19 years. Peculiar enough, the castle wasn't rebuilt to a 17th century house but to its medieval appearance. Although modernizations were carried out inside, a lot of medieval elements remain behind plastered and bricked up doorways. The existence of Amersoyen Castle was again threatened in 1672 when French troops invaded the Netherlands, destroying many castles on their path. The last lord of the Van Arkel family saved the castle by paying a ransom of 7,000 florins to the French troops. This left him in a big financial trouble, and he died in 1694. After his death, the castle was successfully owned by several families from the southern Netherlands, or present-day Belgium. It was it wasn't permanently lived in because its owners spent most of their time at their estates in Belgium. The last lord of Amersoyen was a baron a Baron Arthur de Walmont. During 1868, he entertained an English writer, John Box, who wrote a book about the castle called Chronicles of the Castle of Elmoroy, or Emerzode, illustrated with photographs of the castle and its interior. This baron sold the castle completely emptied in 1873 to the Roman Catholic Church of Amerzode. Presumably after he lost a game of dice with the local priest, the church then founded a covenant in the castle. The moat was filled in and a large chapel was built against the incorporated castle. The castle's religious use ended abruptly in World War II, when the castle was heavily shelled by Allied troops. After the war, its remains were used by a local businessman as a factory producing washing machines. Geez, why, bro? Until 1957, when the Friends of the Castles of Gelderland Foundation bought the castle and started an extensive restoration. When the restoration was finished in 1975, the castle was back in its medieval appearance. At present, the castle is partly a museum and partly used as an office. The museum can be visited for a fee. As you can see, this castle looks really nice. We have some water there. We have a gate, and it's to its medieval appearance, which actually does look nice. Now this time, because of course all of it was probably all open. There were no glass windows. I don't think glass windows were. But yeah, now all the glass windows are added. But yeah, here you have the Bailey. As you can see, yeah, it has some tight spaces. Ooh, nice natural light. A fireplace. I definitely recommend it if you want to go, but you have to pay for a small fee. Our next castle. On to the next castle. Annandale Castle. Now this one is interesting since this castle is from the 1600s. This thing was built in the 1600s when castles were already obsolete. Now basically, they built this castle not for its medieval appearance, but like for their taste. Annandale Castle, locally known as Castel Annandale, lies south of the village of Posterholt in the Limburg province in the Netherlands. Annandale Castle was built between 1607 and 1618 by Count Hendrik van Danberg for his sister Anna and Charlotte. The castle had an almost square ground plan and was initially surrounded by a moat. After 1852, in the hands of the von Schlossenschnig family, Annandale Castle became dilapidated and was consequently partially torn down. In 1899, it was reported that a fifth of the former castle was still standing. At present, only 3 circular commons remain. Between 2 of them, the space is bricked up. They were probably part of a gallery. The remains of Annandale Castle are situated on private grounds with sheep grazing, so they cannot be visited. These remains are not very interesting as they convey very little architectural detail. Sadly, you can't really visit the. Sadly, you can't really visit this that much. Now, there's a blocked doorway here, but I presume I'm not really sure if it was used for a gallery. But let me know if it was used for a gallery. Now, this is only for private grounds. Here are the remains, and here's what the castle actually looked like. An 18th century drawing of it, probably made by Jan de here. As you can see, the castle was like a fairy tale palace. Though, really, it was built in the 1600s, so nothing to see here. Asumberg Castle. Asumberg Castle, locally known as Kasteel Asumberg, lies in the town of Heemskerk in the North Holland province in the Netherlands. Although Asumberg Castle may look defensible, the castle is all about appearances. It was built in the late 15th century. By that time, the role of the castles in the Netherlands as defensive strongholds was over. Castles were still being built, but only as comfortable homes. And also, but to show off his power, status, or descent, the builder of Asumberg, Asumberg Castle gave the castle this look. And status, of course, was everything. As this little tale connected to the castle tells. In 1487, the son of the Lord of Asumberg went to study in Orleans in France. There he took lodging at an inn. Due to circumstances, he was compelled to marry the daughter of the inner keeper. After he returned to Asumberg Castle, he felt ashamed for the ordinary descent of his new wife. And so his wife was put up in a separate house while he stayed at the castle. But all too soon he regretted his youthful lapse even more, because he discovered that his new wife had started to forge coins, together with her servants and chaplain. Forgery being a capital crime in those days, they were all killed. Around 1546, the castle was renovated by Gerrit van Assendelft and kept being used as a manor for centuries. In the early 20th century, the castle became a youth hostel. The castle, therefore, has never seen action, nor could it have withstood any siege because of its thin walls. But it's a nice castle which at present used as a hostel. As you can see, it has thin walls, so it wouldn't be able to withstand a siege, but of course, it might look medieval. Was that Of course, I believe you can. I'm not really sure if you can go inside it, but no, of course, yeah, a hostel might be something for a wedding, I believe, for like to host, like hosting public events or parties. And yeah, this is inside the castle, and it has a more modern interior with reluctant medieval style. Yeah, it has a cafe area. So yeah, now here's what the castle looked like. Here's a drawing of Asumberg Castle made by Roland Rogman around 1647. Here's another sketch by Rogman as well. Rogman as well. Then we have another drawings of Asumberg Castle by P.H. Purvis. We have Asumberg Castle pictured in 1908. By the way, it's very nice, and there are buildings nearby, but of course, Castle's still standing. It's a nice castle. It wouldn't stand any siege, but still, a lovely castle to taste. On to our next castle, Aston Castle. Aston Castle, locally known as Castile Aston, lies south of the town of Aston, in the province of North Brabant in the Netherlands. A stone building with the name Aston was first mentioned in 1399. In the early 15th century, Aston Castle was built by Goosen van Berkel. This castle had an almost square ground plan with three wings, around a courtyard, and a small corner tower circled by a moat. Between 1575 and 1625, the late medieval castle was rebuilt into a Renaissance manor by Bernhard van Merode. Also, the present bailey was built and the second moat was dug. Around 1680, the west wing was torn down by Everard van Doorney. Several repairs were carried out around 1740, but Aston Castle was already following disrepair. It was then owned by regents who had their residences in Holland. From 1836 on, Aston Castle wasn't even permanently inhabited anymore. The empty building then slowly fell to ruin. Between 1935 and 1942, Aston Castle seemed to be saved when it was primarily rebuilt by Baron Clemens van Hovell told West Vela. It was a rigorous reconstruction, partially based on fantasy, but in 1944, the castle was shelled by German forces for grenades and destroyed. At present, the ruin of Aston Castle is privately owned. The buildings in the bailey are used as private residences. Aston Castle can be visited for a fee, but only on an appointment. If you guys want to... Now, this is a privately owned castle. Yes, you can actually visit Aston Castle for a fee, but you have but guys, if you but please make an appointment, but only on an appointment. Just make an appointment with a guide and as part of a group, so so you don't get re, so you don't get kicked out. Now, when he visited, this is creator. He was lucky to be granted free access by one of the inhabitants of the bailey, so he had the ruin all to himself. This is a lovely and interesting ruin, and I recommend you guys come. Now, obviously, it has a gate, and yeah, I believe there was some towers now. It's ruins now overgrowth by nature. I don't know what was inside it, but really, I think these were all windows. This might have been where a painting would have been held, and this might have been a fireplace. Yeah, fungus mushrooms have grown over it, so yeah, not cool. Battenberg Castle. Battenberg Castle, locally known as Kasteel Battenberg, lies in the village with the same name in the Gelderland province in the Netherlands. Concerning the origin of Battenberg Castle, there are two traditions. The first one is that the castle was founded by a Batavian warrior, prince named Bato, who left his own lands together with a lot of his warriors to settle in the Betui region and installed his headquarters here. The second one is that at this site a fortification was erected together with a Roman temple dedicated to the Roman god Mars or Victor. No evidence has been found for either one of these traditions, so they're most likely fake. So most likely two of these traditions might have been fake, are a myth and fake. More likely, a stone keep on the moat will have moat will have existed here in the 12th century. Around 1300, a member of the Van Bronckhorst-Battenberg family is suspected to have started the construction of the castle, possibly a stone shell keep. This castle was partially destroyed in 1497 by the troops of Albert III, Duke of Saxony. It was restored, strengthening the circular rampart with an entrance gate flanked by two watchtowers and three residential towers to the four winds. Opposite the entrance gate lay three residential wings around a courtyard. In 1503, Battenberg Castle was besieged by Charles II, Duke of Guelders, and a part of the castle's defenses were again destroyed. After rebuilding, it was again destroyed in 1540 by an expedition of the city of Nijmegen. And during a bombardment in 1568 by the troops of Philip of Hohenlohe-Neuenstein. The oldest part of the castle collapsed. Around 1600, the castle was rebuilt by Maximilian van Bronckhorst under Count Johann van Horn. The castle was restored and furnished with splendor, but in 1700, when the castle came into the possession of the Counts of Bentenheim, Steinfurt, the castle already wasn't permanently inhabited anymore. In 1795, the castle fate was sealed after the rooms were filled with hay and the water pump. Destroyed. The castle was torched by the French invaders. Battenberg Castle completely burned down. It was never rebuilt again, and its ruins became a stone quarry for cheap building materials. Yeah. In 1820, the standing remains of the castle were considerable larger than today. But from then on, the owner, Count van Bethlen Steinfurt, started to demolish the ruin, and even in 1922, the castle suffered damage from gunshots. After World War II, the castle ruins were confiscated by the state, and in 1953 sold to the Friends of the Castles of Gelderland Foundation. From then on, the ruins underwent several consolidation processes. This is a romantic ruin in a nice little village. Too bad it's not accessible. Yes, you can actually look at the site, but sadly, you can't really visit the castle whatsoever. Well, the ruins, of course. But it's really sad that you can't visit the ruins, as this would be a lovely place to get on. But I guess since you can't, and here you have one of the gates, which I think you can visit the bridge, but obviously enough, there's a gate in the way, and another way you could get there illegally if you wanted to is, I don't know. As by jumping over there. But again, we should listen to rules. We should listen to the rules and basically not do it. Here's a drawing of Battenberg Castle made in 1674. So yeah, I think this is, of course, an 18th century drawing. What so actually look like, of course. That is Battenberg. That is Battenberg Castle. The next castle, Beitstein Castle. Beitstein Castle, locally known as Castel Batstein lies in the town of Vianen in the Utrecht province in the Netherlands. Batstein Castle was built in the 14th century by Gijsbert ben Busshem, Lord of Vianen. It was built in a corner of the town of Vianen, within the city walls. The large square keep was built around 1370 from the ransom received for the French Count de Saint Paul, who had been held hostage at Beitstein Castle. The keep was named Saint Paul as a result. This name later changed to Simple Tower. In 1414, the castle passed to Walraven I van Brederode through marriage. Under Hendrik van Brederode, Beitstein Castle experienced its golden age. Even coins were minted at the castle. In 1566, the beggars gathered at Beitstein Castle and drew up a political document that was later handed over to Margaretha of Parma, governess of the Netherlands. In 1567, the town and castle were taken by the Spanish army. In the 17th century, Beitstein Castle again came into the hands of the Van Brederode family. They rebuilt the castle around 1650 to a more comfortable and modern residence. It are the remains of that castle that can be seen today. In 1696, fireworks started a large fire in the castle, which destroyed a large part of the castle. Due to financial problems, Beitstein Castle was never rebuilt. In 1725, the remains of the castle were sold to the states of Holland and West Friesland by Lord Simon Hendrik Adolf von der Lippe. The large keep was torn down in 1771. The rest of the castle followed in 1828 to 1829. The only thing left at present of the castle are part of the decorative gate called the Hof or Bosch Gate, and some connecting wall parts. The former castle terrain is now built over with houses. Really, not much remains of the castle today. The only thing that remains is the gate. And basically the entrance and some castle. But that's basically just it. There's not much. Now here's actually a plan what the castle actually looked like. And here's what the castle actually looked like in 1607. I believe, maybe, I don't know. No, in 1807. I don't know. Now, of course, this is an 18. On to the next castle. Berg Castle. Berg Castle, locally known as Kasteel Huis Berg, lies in the town of Herenberg, in the province of Gelderland, in the Netherlands. The first Berg Castle on this location dates back to around 1240 and consisted of a moated round tough stone tower with a separate moated bailey. Excavations in 1938 revealed the foundation of this tower. Both tower and bailey were originally strengthened by a palisade, which was replaced by a circular stone defensive wall before 1300. As the castle had been continually inhabited, the building and rebuilding kept on going. Probably before 1400, the round tower was torn down and replaced by a large square keep. Also, other large parts of the present castle were built before 1450. The main residential building and two of the three towers of the bailey on the Bailey. In the 16th century, the castle underwent major rebuilding by Count Willem Willem the Willem the Fifth van der Berg. In the 80 Years' War with Spain, the Count sided with his brother-in-law, Prince William of Orange, or Orania. Because of this, he was summoned before the Council of Blood of the Spanish Count Alva. In 1568, he fled to Germany with his family, and his possessions were confiscated. During these times, the castle was repeatedly sieged and suffered a lot of damage. When Count William could return in 1576, the castle had been dismantled and no longer had any military purpose. In the following century, a true building frenzy followed. The war damages were repaired on the Bailey. A large industrial building was built. The inner courtyard was loaded by 2 meters. A stair tower, a large staircase, and the new residential wing were built. Also, the face of the residential building was plastered white, and the keep was equipped with a spire. The year 1735, however, was a disastrous year for the castle. It was totally destroyed by fire. It was rebuilt afterwards, but it didn't retrieve its old splendor. Also, the moats were partially filled in. The castle itself became a priest's seminary. In 1912, Birk Castle, which was in poor condition due to bad maintenance, was bought by a local industrialist, J. H. van Heek. He started a large restoration to save the castle. In 1929, the restorations were completed. But alas, in 1939, another fire broke out, which again destroyed the largest part of the castle. Again, J. H. van Heek took up the restoration works. These gave the castle its present appearance. The castle houses a large late medieval art collection. The castle houses a large late medieval art collection. It can be visited for a fee. Here's the castle with its big moat. It's basically now a museum, I believe. Now, should castles be turned into... Well, maybe yes, but that's... But of course, here's the engraving from 1774, and the drawing was made in 1703, and this is how the castle looked. Alright, that was Burr Castle. On to the next castle, Berkhay Castle. Berkhay Castle, locally known as Huis te Berkhay, lies on a graveyard in the Hilgersberg neighborhood in the city of Rotterdam, in the province of South Holland in the Netherlands. The name Huis ten Berkhay means house at the hill. The castle was built in the first half of the 13th century on a moat surrounded by a moat. Next to the castle lay a church and a farm, which both originated in the 11th or beginning of the 12th century. About the origin of the moat, the castle, and the church, a legend was told. Once there was a female giant called Hillegond. She went to the beach and filled her skirt with sand because she wanted to reinforce the soil at the spot where she wanted to build her castle. While walking, her skirt ripped open, and the sand fell to the ground, and so the castle and church got built there. The possible founder is Count Willem II, Count of Holland. After the keep was built on a sandy layer. A hill was manually thrown up and around the keep up to the height of the original entrance of the first floor. The castle was mentioned in a document of Count Floris V of Holland in 1269. Later, it came into possession of the family Van Martinez. In 1426, the castle was burned and destroyed by the troops of Jacqueline, Countess of Hainaut. There are no images from the Burgh Castle from before 1426, and later ones showed the castle as a ruin. Until 1832, the ruin lay forgotten behind the church. In that year, a graveyard was laid out around the church and the castle ruined, because the people of the Hildesberg weren't allowed to bury their dead in the church anymore. In 1940, the castle ruin underwent preservation works. In 1969 and 1970, excavations were carried out, but because there are graves and directly around the ruin, these were very limited. The castle ruin consists of a square brick keep which has a dimension of 10 by 10 meters and walls of 1.35 meters thick. The present-day entrance was made in the 19th century, when vaults were being constructed inside the ruin. At present, the floor of the keep is totally covered with tombstones. The graveyard is freely accessible during the daytime. Sadly, the interior of the keep is fenced off. I kind of don't like when they fence off the castles because I can't believe they would actually fence this off. This was once a castle, and basically it's now just a graveyard castle. Here is a possible. This is from an unknown drawing. This is how the castle would have looked like, possibly looked like. But anyways, you can actually go visit for yourself if you want. Beverweerd Castle. Beverweerd Castle, locally known as Kasteel Beverweerd, lies north of the village of Werkhoven in the province of Utrecht, in the Netherlands. The castle was built in the first half of the 13th century on a small island in the Kromme Rhine River. It then consisted of a simple tower, house of 2 floors. In the second half of the 13th century, the 2 square corner towers were added. The oldest known inhabitant of Beverweerd Castle was a Zwider van Zuylen and his wife, the Hildegardis, or Hildegonda van de Velde. The castle was a fief of the Bishop of Utrecht and probably held by the family of Hildegardis. Because when she died in 1296, the castle did not go to Zwider, but to a family member of her, Nicolas van de Velde. In later centuries, Beverweerd Castle went to several families through marriages and inheritances. Amongst them was the Van Vianen and Bochout and the de Lannoy families. In 1563, Philip William, Prince of Orange, inherited the castle. It stayed in the Orange-Nassau family for the next 200 years. During those times, the castle was rebuilt several times, though still keeping much of its medieval character. In 1782, Beverweerd Castle went to the Van Heckeren family. Between 1835 and 1862, the castle was rebuilt into a regular Gothic revival-style mansion by the architect C. Kram for Baron H.J.C.E. van Heckeren. Then it also received the white plaster on its exterior. This was removed in 1934, only to be applied again in 2010. In 1958, the castle was sold to a foundation for Quaker schools. It served as a school until 1997 under the name International School Beaverweir. The boarded up, the, bo- they bo- the boarded out buildings for housing. The students can still be seen in the park next to the castle. At present, Beaverweir Castle is private property. It is now inhabited by the Dutch painter and former art forger Geert Jan Hassen. Sadly, you can't really visit it, but I am wondering what's inside the castle itself. Now, sadly, you can't go inside since it's owned by a dark. Yeah, that's really disappointing when someone owns a private property because you really want to go tour the castle and see stuff, but you gotta respect the owners. Now, this is the most modern structure of the castle. Here is a drawing of Beaverweir Castle by Rogman around 1647. And another one from 1647 and one from 1745. Next up on our castle list is Blankenberg Castle. Blankenberg Castle, locally known as Kasteel Blankenberg, lies in the town of Bonningen in the Gelderland province in the Netherlands. The site of Blankenberg Castle has been used for habitation since some 2,000 years. There is proof of a Roman villa and a Carolingian settlement on the site. The spelling of its name varies. It is also known as Black, Blank, Blanken, Blackenborch Castle. Later, during the 12th and 13th century, a predecessor of Blankenberg Castle stood here, Wildenberg Castle. It was the home of the Bonningen Knights. In 1447, the Van Alpeltern family sold Blankenberg Castle to Lady Ott van Egmond. It stayed in the Van Egmond family until 1462 when it was sold by Frederick van Egmond, great-grandfather of Anna van Egmond van Buren, the first wife of William I, Prince of Orange. In 1774, the castle was sold in a dilapidated state by the Van Wyhe family, who had owned it for several centuries. In 1863, the castle was pulled down, except the present tower. Its stones were used to build the farm that still stands next to the castle terrain. The former castle consisted of a main castle with a bailey and double moats. The present remaining tower was the gate tower to the bailey. It is now part of a public park. It looks to me that the tower is not being used for anything, although a leaflet I found stated that it was used as an office by some kind of motive, motiv- motiv- motivational speakers. This is all the historical info I was able to find. If anyone knows more, please mail me. Now, I don't think you can get inside since it's probably locked, but there's probably a way to get in it if you can get in. Next castle. Bly. Okay, now my Dutch is not going to be good for some of these castles, but let's let's go with it. Bly Blyhenbeek Castle. Blyhenbeek Castle, locally known as Castillo Blyhenbeek, lies near the village of Afferden in the Limburg province in the Netherlands. Blyhenbeek Castle was built around 1350 as a moated farm with a simple keep. A Van Miraler family resided there. In 1405, castle became property of a Wynant Schneck. During the 15th century, the castle was strengthened and the old keep was incorporated in a newly built residential hall. Also, a curtain wall and two corner towers, a square and a round one, were added again in the 16th century. The castle was enlarged with another residential building and new moats. In 1579, the castle was owned by the military commander Martin Schneck van Nijegen. It was severely damaged and plundered during a siege by the Spaniards in 1589. During the 17th century, the castle was radically altered. A lot of the medieval architectural details disappeared, as it was rebuilt reusing the old building material as a stately mansion. It are mostly the remains of this building period we see today. By 1872, the castle was used as a Jesuit convent and a chapel was built at the west side of the castle. In 1911, a fire struck the bailey. It burned down, but was rebuilt shortly after. In 1917, the castle was the property of a merchant from Rotterdam, W. Prins, who sold it to the Huygens family from Nijmegen. The castle was destroyed in 1945 when it was bombed by the Allies, who were trying to dislodge German soldiers. It was never rebuilt and fell to ruin. During the last decade, Blythenbeek Castle has been consolidated. It can now be visited on appointment with a guide for a fee. A nice ruin. The gates. So, yeah, as you can see, there were some people who actually visited the castle. You can actually, in a photo, it actually shows you what actually the picture of what the manor house actually looked like, before it fell into ruin. On to the next castle. Volkoven Castle. Volkoven Castle, locally known as Kasteel Volkhoven, lies in the village of Volkhoven in the province of North Brabant in the Netherlands. When Volkhoven Castle was first built is unknown. It was first mentioned in 1392 when Jan Oem van Arkel founded a chapel at the castle. Archaeological excavations show that the oldest castle consisted of a 5 by 5 meter square keep with 1 till 1.4 meter thick walls. A great hall with a walled courtyard and a well. It was situated on a slightly elevated terrain encircled by a moat, which stood dry during the summer. In 1498, the castle was destroyed by the troops of Karel van Gerrie, but rebuilt with the exception of the keep. It are the remains of the second castle that we see today. In 1499, the manor was elevated to a barony, and in 1640 to a county. In 1672, the castle was blown up by the French. Only the gate tower and the residential wing survived. It was probably restored because in 1794 it was described as a beautiful mansion. In 1794 and 1795, the castle was occupied by the French. When they left, they tore down the walls. The higher water level of the nearby River Meuse did the rest, so remaining wall fragments had to be demolished. When the owners who had fled to England returned, they built a new small house on the foundations of the old keep of the first castle. This is a white chapel-like building with a brick stair tower next to the castle terrain. This house is called La Licorne. In 1810, only a small gate tower with two towers and part of a curtain wall remained of the castle. Later, this gate tower and one of the towers disappeared as a result of neglect or demolition. The remaining wall and tower fragments were consolidated in 1974. At the same time, a private house was built on the castle terrain. The castle terrain is private property and therefore not accessible. Which, for some reason, I actually don't like that. Since really, we like to visit ruins of castles. Not fair, bro. But that's Volkhoven Castle. To the next castle, Bongard Castle. Bongard Castle, locally known as Castile de Bongard, lies in the village of Bocholt in the province of Limburg in the Netherlands. Bongard Castle was first mentioned in 1372 and was probably built earlier that century by the Bongard family, a local noble family who were already influential in this area around 1300. In 1523, it was owned by Bernard van Bongard. He built the present castle on the foundation of its moated predecessor, in the style of the Mosin Renaissance. He added 4 round corner towers to the castle in 1550. Then it had a squared ground plan with a square gate tower and 4 round corner towers. The castle was owned by the Bongard family and their descendants, the Van der Leyen family, until 1783. Then Count of Francois Charles van der Leyen sold it to the Baroness Marie Barbie de Rothschild. In 1795, during the French Revolution, the castle was confiscated and later sold to commoners during the 19th century. The castle was reduced greatly until only two wings of the castle were one between the gate tower and one between the corner tower, and the other against the corner tower remained. At present, Bongard Castle is a private residence and cannot be visited. But although it's a very nice castle, though, I wish it was accessible, but sadly, it isn't. Well, so, yeah. So, yeah, I'm recording! Bourne Castle. Bourne Castle, locally known as Kasteel Born, lies in the town of Born, in the province of Limburg, in the Netherlands. Bourne Castle was first mentioned in 1154. How that castle looked is unknown. It was then the seat of the Van Born family. They sold it in 1321 to the Van Valkenburg family. In 1400, the castle and its land were sold to William III, Duke of Guelders, during which a throughout inventory was made up. In 1538, the castle was dismantled. Its stones were used to strengthen the city walls of Sitar. What remained was destroyed in 1540. What remained was destroyed in 1542 by 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 the troops of Rene van Chatillon, Prince of Orange. In 1662, the remains of Borne Castle were bought by Jan Arnold de Leroy. He then ordered the construction of the present Borne Castle, which was finished in 1666. In 1813, the castle was sold to a merchant from Maastricht, Michiel de Gelsen. He became the first owner who didn't belong to the nobility. Later on, it became the property of the Van Roosteren family. From 1906 till 1930, several restorations were carried out. In 1930, however, the castle was destroyed by a large fire and was never rebuilt. In 1937, some demolition works were carried out to make the ruins safer. Its owner sold the remains of Borne Castle to the municipality of Borne in 1955. The castle was consolidated during the 2000s. The buildings on the Bailey are now used as offices. The ruin of Borne Castle is now wedged between the Bailey on one side and a small zoo, which was originally the castle park, on the other. You can see Borne Castle from the Bailey, which can be accessed from the side. The castle ruin itself cannot be accessed, or maybe only during heritage days. I don't know. The castle can also be seen from the terrain of the zoo, but they charge a hefty entrance fee. It's a beautiful room, by the way. Ooh, how many more castles in the Netherlands we got? We probably got a lot of more. We got a lot more. Bovingien Castle. Bovingien Castle. Well, I'm not going to say the locally known as Castile something because really this is going to waste the time of me. So, anyways, Bovingien Castle was first mentioned in 1554 as the property of a Jan van Brecht. It was described as a stately moated house. It had been built in 1548 by Jan to replace an older house. At that time, it was called Boveri or Boverleihen and was used as a farm. In the remainder of the 16th century, the castle was enlarged until it got its present appearance. In 1614, the castle was bought by Philip William, Prince of Orange. The Princes of Orange were never particularly interested in it, and they mostly rented it out. This led to the dilapidation of the castle, so much so that it was almost put up for demolition. In 1775, it was bought and subsequently uh, restored by Jan Daniel Engel. A George Reich bought the castle in 1799. He carried out several alterations at the castle, replaced the gate building with the present one and Frenchified the name of the castle to Bovingien, as was the custom in that time. In 1807, Reich sold the castle. During the 19th century, Bovingien Castle passed through the hands of several families. In 1901, it was bought by a Leopold de Bruijn, who laid out the present gardens. In 1930, the castle was acquired by the local municipality to prevent the building of several villas of the castle grounds. They rented the castle out to the catechists of the Pius X, Pius X Society. In 1971, the municipality sold to Bovington Castle to the Barban Delta Water Authority. They, they carried out a restoration. A restoration. They carried out a restoration of the castle. They built a new office building on the grounds of the castle. At, at present, the domain of Bovington Castle can be visited for a fee during office hours. The interior of the castle and the gate building cannot be visited, although the castle can be rented for wedding ceremonies, but together with the nice gardens, a visit to Bovington Castle is nice to pass time. What I like about these forgotten castles, what I love about these, what I love about these forgotten castles, uh, is basically not many tourists actually come across. The only famous ones are the Dihar, maybe Van Zylen, or Moodverslot. But these more forgotten ones, or more lesser known in the area, more by common. Well, castles.nl covers all of the castles. For one, I'll also be covering lost castles of the Netherlands, the ones that are really lost to time. Now, of course, everything is closed and the door is in the way. And that's lily pads, kind of like the landscape there. Anyways, on to the next castle. Now, this will be in parts as I can't really cover this all in one video, but I'll try my best. But, but I'll try my best to get all of the Dutch castles. Brakel Castle. Brakel Castle, locally known as Slot Brakel, lies next to the village of Brakel in the province of Gelderland in the Netherlands. Tradition has it that in 860 a castle was built on the site of the present-day ruin. It was built by Bodhidwin II, who probably also built Alst Castle, and destroyed by the Vikings in 1009. Probably in the 13th century, a new castle was built on the site. In 1321, a certain Eustache House, Knight of Raquel, and his son Stathain dedicated the castle to the Count of Gelders. In the same year, however, the castle was struck by lightning and burned down. Really rare, but yeah, that is true, probably. After a partial rebuilding, the castle was again destroyed in 1407, this time by the troops of Count Willem the Sixth of Holland. A century later, the castle was rebuilt as a squared water stronghold, consisting of one or two rectangular residential buildings, round corner towers, and defensive walls enclosing a courtyard. In 1672, the castle was destroyed for the last time by French troops. Again, for no reason at all. As a revenge for not paying a contribution, it was never rebuilt again. Sorry there. The present-day castle ruins mostly date back to the 15th century. In 1768, the Reverend Wilhelmus built the new Brakel house. The remains of the old castle were included in the garden layout. In 1811, when the new house was being refurbished, the garden was converted in the English landscape style. In the following years, the castle ruins underwent some repairs to prevent them from collapsing. Since 1973, the ruins of Raquel Castle and the surrounding park are in the care of the Friends of the Castles of Gelderland Foundation. The condition of the ruin is worrisome, mostly because of the corroding and crumbling wall of the waterline. The ruin itself sits on a moated island and cannot be visited. The park in which it's is freely accessible. Maybe you can get on it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Why? But please just don't climb on it, as really it's been eroding away, so really if you put your weight on it, yeah, the whole ruins of the castle are going to come crumbling down. But yeah, that is Raquel Castle. On to Brederode Castle. Brederode Castle, locally known as Castel van Brederode, lies in the dunes and woodlands northwest of the village of Zandpoort in the North Holland province in the Netherlands. Brederode Castle was built in 1282 by Willem van Brederode. The first castle consisted of a bailey and a square keep, which probably stood at the present-day courtyard. Its function was to control the through road to the Camerlen region. Around 1300, the main castle was built, with 3 squared and one round tower at its corners. This castle was besieged and destroyed by the Cod troops under the command of Gijsbert van Nijenrode in 1351. Between 1354 and 1426, Brederode Castle was completely restored on the existing foundations until its destruction again in 1426 by the people of Haarlem, which mainly damaged the southern part of the castle. Brederode Castle had been the residence of the lords of Brederode. Afterwards, they moved to Beitstein Castle in Vianen, which they had gained by marriage. It took until 1464 before the northern part, which had been less damaged, was again suitable for habitation. The new castle wasn't a defensible house anymore, but a fairly comfortable residence. In 1491, however, the castle fell prey to plundering German soldiers, and the castle fell into decay. Around 1573, shortly after the siege of the city of Haarlem, Spanish troops set fire to the castle with that the north wall of the kitchen wing collapsed and fell into the moat. Its debris nowadays forms a little overgrown island in the moat, which you can probably see today. In the following period, only the buildings on the bailey were habitable, but after 600, these also fell into decay. In 1679, the fief fell to the States of Holland due to the death of Wolfert van Brederode. In the 2.5 century that followed from 1600 until 1862, the ruins of Brederode Castle slowly disappeared under the dune sands. Only small pieces of wall stuck out of the sand. In 1862 until 1903, the castle ruins were excavated and researched. Also, between 1986 and 1988, the castle's construction history was researched. At present, Brederode Castle can be visited for a fee. This is a very nice castle ruin, recommended for anyone who wants to go. No, I know. So you can actually visit the castle ruins yourself. So as you can see, there's a little museum, and of course, inside there's a little house is a little museum inside part of the castle, with a model of how the castle actually looked like in its fullest form. Anyways, it's a nice ruin though, and we have a brick staircase. I wonder, I don't know if you can go in there, but if you do, it's tight. Here are the windows. Well, basically, actually, part of the housing has now really been. And you have the moat. Ew. Oh, looks like you have a tree stump growing. Oh god, you have a tree stump growing over the castle. That's funny. Oh, there's a tight stairwell. Brick, and there are no railings, so if you fell, good luck because I believe there was a lot. Oh. But anyways, it's a nice castle ruin, and there are drawings of itself. Next castle. Now we move on to the C section. Now we move on to the C section of the castles, the cap of the Netherlands, the castles that start with the C. Up first, Croy Castle. Croy Castle, locally known as Kasteel Croy, lies south of the village of Arlie Riksdale in the province of North Brabant in the Netherlands. Croy Castle was first mentioned in 1472, when it was owned by a Rutger van Erp. Then it probably consisted of a simple fortified house with a tower. In 1477, he sold his land and castle to Jacob de Croy, son of the Count of Chimay. In 1494, it was again sold, this time by Jacob, this time to a Cornelius the First van Bergen. It was probably Cornelius who gave the castle its present appearance and who built the gate building. In the following notable centuries, Croy Castle was owned by several noble families. Okay, in 1772, Croy Castle was acquired by the Van der Bruggen family. In 1809, they received the King of Holland, the French Louis Bonaparte, Louis Bonaparte, as a guest at their castle. Nice. In 1873, the last private owner of the castle, Lady Constance van der Bruggen, died. In her will, she stipulated that the castle should be used to house elderly locals. This was carried out in 1873, when a Catholic congregation opened up a residence for the elderly. in the castle. The residence was in operation until 1977 when it had to close due to safety regulations. In 1990, the castle was restored and is since then used as an office building. Why? At present, offices of several Croy Castle houses offices of several companies. The barn in front of the castle is used as a shop, and the gate building is part private residence, part bed and breakfast accommodation. The interior of the castle cannot be visited. Too bad. The owner, the, own, the owner of the website castles.nl probably loved the exterior. Yeah, I believe so, and I believe that I'm not really sure what's inside since we can't even get access to it. But maybe I am going to try to manage maybe to let us go inside to see what the interior looks like as no one has ever saw the interior. Or maybe you have to work there. So I guess you have to work there, I guess. Which basically we basically it's just a nice barn castle. It's just a nice castle. Do Now that is the only C. Moving on to the D section of castles in the Netherlands. The castles in the Netherlands names that start with D. Doorne Castle. Doorne Castle, locally known as Groot Kasteel or Nieuw Kasteel, which translates to Great Castle or New Castle, lies in the town of Doorne in the province 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 of Limburg in the Netherlands. Doorne Castle was built shortly before 1387 by Gerard Everardszoon van Doorne on a sandy elevation in the swampy valley of a small stream. The Viller. It was a square building with several turrets. Due to the thickness of the walls, though, it probably didn't have a real military purpose. In 1511, the castle was burned down by troops from Gelders, but was rebuilt, only to be plundered by Spanish troops in 1599. In 1645, Balif Otto de Bischer rebuilt the decaying castle into an inn. In 1653, the castle was enlarged by Rogier Baron of Leefdal, who had bought it in 1651. Around 1750, the height of the turrets was lowered, removing the spires, and part of the north wing was demolished. In 1759, the height of the turrets was lowered. Okay. In 1759, the castle was bought by the Diodorus de Smet. His family also thoroughly rebuilt the castle and would own it until World War II. During the liberation of Doorne in 1944, the castle suffered heavily from Allied fire. The remains we see today mostly date back to the 17th century. On the other side of the road stands the predecessor of Doorne Castle, the Klein Castle, Castile, or Oud Castile, which translates to the Little Castle or Old Castle. It's a 14th century tower house with added farm buildings. At present, the castle ruin is being used as a youth association, hence the ugly toilet building placed inside the ruin. Ugly toilet building placed inside the ruin. In 2002, the ruin was consolidated, during which the ivy on the walls was removed. This is, of course, better for the walls, but destroyed a lot of its romantic appeal. The exterior of the castle is freely accessible. So there's a mention that there's a mention that there is a toilet for the an ugly toilet. Ugh, bro. What? We don't need no toilet in the castle, bro. That's disgusting. Now I'm not really sure where the toilet is, but it might be somewhere around here. If it is, however, if it is, oh yeah, here are the bathrooms. Ew, kind of nasty, bro. Because why you want to see why you want to see why you want to like get your kids on the toilet? Ugh, disgusting, bro. But anyway, here's the sketch of the castle, and then here's another one. The predecessor of Durning Castle, and I'm not really sure if there's another one. Ah, Devur Castle. Devur Castle, locally known as Thihoise Devur, lies in the town of Lees in the province of South Holland in the Netherlands. Devur Castle is a keep which was built in around 1375 by Reinier de Aver, a knight and vassal of the Count of Holland, Zeeland, and Hainaut. Albrecht van Buren, or Albert of Bavaria. It was situated on the border of the old dunes and the swampy inland. It consisted of the keep and a bailey surrounded a, by a broad moat. In the 16th century, a small extension was built against the round side. Therefore, the moat between the keep and the bailey was filled in. This extension was later enlarged, and the castle became a country mansion. The medieval tower was hidden out of sight at the back. People lived here till the 1750s, after which it stood abandoned for almost a century. Then in 1846, the 16th century extension collapsed, and over the next 5 to 10 years, all but the tower was demolished by anyone needing building materials. Yet again, the tower lost its roof during a storm in 1862, but the walls withstood all attempts at destruction by man and nature. In 1945, the Dutch state gained ownership of the castle remains and sold it to the town of Lees for 1 florin. By the time restoration began in 1973, all the timber had gone. Windows and doorways were eroded, grass and brushwood was growing on the walls. Only the cellar remained roofed. Devur Castle has been open to the public since 1978. In 1989, the foundation of the 16th and 17th century extensions were raised just above ground level to show the ground plan of the complex. As you can see, you can actually visit the bailey for yourself. And here's inside the keep. A nice candle, stairway. Ooh, and you have some coat of arms shields. We have a nice fireplace. I'm not really sure if the fireplace is lit up, but this is how Devere Castle looked. On to our next castle. Dorn Castle. Dorn Castle, locally known as Hoos Dorn, lies in the town of Dorn, in the Utrecht province in the Netherlands. Dorn Castle was first mentioned in 838 as Villa Dorhen, in an ecclesiastical property. This Villa Dorhen probably wasn't a real castle, but in state governed by a deed. It is assumed that the first real castle at this site was built at the end of the 13th century by a dean, either Bochard van Hengoen or Adolf van Waldeck. This first castle was rectangular with 3 round corner towers and a gate tower at the 4th corner. The dean lived as a noble on Dorn Castle, which angered the bishop. So in 1322, Dorn Castle was destroyed by the bishop with the help of William III, Count of Holland, or William the Good. A new dean, Hendrik van Meerlaar, rebuilt the castle in 1347 with permission of the bishop. This new castle consisted of several buildings centered around a courtyard. At the east, this was secured by a curtained wall, and in the northwest stood a keep building against the round corner tower. Furthermore, it had a gate building at the north side and a bailey. In the first half of the 17th century, Dorn Castle was rebuilt by Rainier van Golstadion after it had fallen to ruin. In the first half of the 18th century, Dorn Castle was probably rebuilt. One tower was torn down, another was hidden, the curtain wall was lowered, and the keep was modernized. In 1792, the castle was bought by the widow Wendela and Leonora den Hovey, Lady of Dorn, den Bosch and Sleeburg. At the time, the castle still had its medieval ground plan. She rebuilt the castle into a U-shaped mansion in style of Neo-Renaissance. Several other owners followed until Dorn Castle was bought in 1919 by the famous German Emperor Wilhelm II, who had been granted asylum in the Netherlands after World War I. He made his castle a real residence by bringing 34 wagon loads of furniture and other personal belongings to the castle, coming from all his castles and palaces in Germany. Wilhelm II lived at Dorn Castle until his death in 1941, after which his remains were set in a mausoleum on the estate. After his death, the castle became a Hohenzollern museum. At present, the castle is still a museum, but mainly about Wilhelm II. Now, actually, the castle is now a museum, and it's mostly about... Yep, here is where Wilhelm II is buried. Now, here's actually how Dorn Castle actually looked before William II ever arrived. So the castle actually looked like this. Now on the inside, mostly everything, it's now a museum about Wilhelm II, because we all know that Wilhelm II died in the Netherlands. Dornenburg Castle. Dornenburg Castle, locally known as Kasteel Dornenburg, lies next to the village with the same name in the Gelderland province in the Netherlands. Dornenburg Castle is a good example of a late medieval castle with a bailey. The castle is first mentioned in 1295. It isn't known how the castle looked back then. The oldest parts of the present structure date back to the 14th century. The castle then consisted of a The castle consisted of a large hall with cellars and a walled rectangular courtyard on a moated island. There is evidence that the hall was plastered red on the outside. In the 15th century, the courtyard was gradually built over. Also, the various parts were continually heightened, which finally, in the 16th century, gave the castle its present block-shaped appearance. The formidable walled bailey in its present form dates back to the 15th century. The chapel is probably a 16th century addition. While the domestic buildings and the farm on the bailey date back to the 17th and 18th century. There's really not much to tell about the history of the castle up until 1936. It was never besieged, it didn't play any role in the political history of the Netherlands, and no one of fame ever resided in it. In its history, it was among some others owned by the families Van Doornik and Van Byland and Van Holmoet. In 1936, the castle was bought in dilapidated shape by a local industrialist J. H. Van Heek, who had previously bought the famous Burr Castle, who handed over to his foundation for preservation of the Dornenberg. A large restoration followed, which was completed in 1941. This was obviously bad timing, as the castle became situated in the front line in 1944. Following the failed Battle of Arnhem, the castle then became a German headquarters, which caused the castle to be destroyed by British bombers. On March 14, 1945, the fleeing Germans then blew up the gate building, although rebuilding the castle seemed a lost cause. The foundation again started to rebuild the castle in its late medieval style. In 1966, Dornenburg Castle had risen again. Dornenburg Castle is a nice castle to visit, although you have to keep in mind that the structure is predominantly the result of the 20th century rebuilding following World War II. The walled bailey is unique in the Netherlands. The bailey is freely accessible. Only guided tours of the castle. Sadly, photography inside the castle is not allowed. There is also a very nice 19th century fort nearby, Fort Pannerden. I'm not really sure what's inside since you can't really take any pictures, but I believe the website does take pictures so you can actually see what's actually inside. This is probably at Sunset Point, and yeah, here's the picture of Dornenburg Castle. Yeah, as you can see, Dornenburg Castle was basically just headquarter moat. Yeah, in 1955, this is like its structure, what it looked like. Yeah, it doesn't look like its present structure, but oh, and here's the 18th century, how the castle looked like. Right there. Dorworth Castle. Ooh, this is a lot of castles. Ooh, there's a lot of castles. A lot to go. So, of course, we're going to please do it as please. Dorworth Castle, locally known as Castile Dorworth, lies at the foot of the wooded hills south of the village with the same name, in the Gelderland province in the Netherlands. Doorwood Castle was known in earlier times as Doornweerd Castle. The present spelling of its name dates from around 1800. The first, probably wooden castle was first mentioned in 1260 when it was besieged and burned to the ground as a result. It was rebuilt in stone. In 1280, this second castle was again besieged, and now the bailey was burned down. The original castle probably consisted of a simple hall keep, 2 stories high, and with 1.20-meter thick walls, and a surrounding moat which was fed by the nearby River Rhine. During the 14th century, the castle was continually enlarged. Until 1402, Doorwood Castle was the property of the Van Doornweerd family. Then it was dedicated to the Count of Gelders. Reinald the Fifth by Robert Van Doornweerd. In return, Robert was granted the castle and its land in 5 Around the middle of the 15th century, the castle was enlarged again, this time by Knight Reinald van Omoit, the 10th Lord of Doornweerd, who was also the owner of Doornenburg Castle. Doorwood Castle reached its largest form just after the middle of the 16th century under Diem Schellart van Obendorf. The 15th Lord of Doornweerd. He made the castle and the group of buildings on the bailey into a unity and adjusted them to the need for more space and comfort. By 1560, Doorwood Castle had gotten its present appearance, and around 1637, the bailey was rebuilt to its present appearance, and a dike was built around the castle to prevent it from flooding by the River Rhine. Shortly after, the castle changed ownership due to financial problems and was granted in 5 to a German Count Anton I van Aldenburg. His successors didn't alter the castle or the bailey, but only acquired more land. At the end of the 18th century, the castle wasn't inhabited anymore, but was looked after by a steward for its owners, who now lived in England. This caused the castle to be in a neglected state. When it was bought in 1837 by the Baron J.A.P. van Brakel. Oh, sorry guys, my face is so itchy. But anyway, hold on. He carried out a throughout restoration and a complete modernization of the castle. This revival of the castle only lasted for a short time, for after the Baron's death in 1844, the castle again fell into neglect and would have certainly crumbled away, had it not been bought in 1910 by a retired artillery officer, F.A. Hofer. Again, the castle was rudely restored, undoing some of the 19th century alterations. In addition, after 1913, it was used as a Dutch artillery museum. The castle suffered heavily in 1944 when it was transformed into a cheerless ruin as a result of German destructiveness. An Allied shelling directly after World War II, a lengthy restoration followed that lasted until 1983. By then, the castle was back into its 18th century state and was owned by the Friends of the Castles of Gelderland Foundation again, who now exploit the castle as a museum. The buildings on the Bailey are used as a hotel. In February of 2004, a real ghost was photographing Dorworth Castle, so now the castle is officially haunted. For the complete story in the photograph, follow this link, Haunted Dorworth Castle, which I will be doing in a separate video. Yeah, in February 2004, someone saw a real ghost was photographing Dorworth Castle. But again, would I visit? Yes, I'm going to visit this camp because really I have God on my side, and don't worry. Even if it is haunted, I will not care because I will have the Holy Spirit within me. Even though I'm a little bit lukewarm, though. But yes, but yeah, this is its bombing. And so many castles. Okay. Oh, we got some more to go. Where are we going to move on to the? When are we going to move on to the? When are we going to move on to to those FGs or something like that? Dawson Castle, locally known as Dawson Castle didn't evolve out of an older building as many other castles did. We know its construction started in 1387 after Lord Arnett van der Dawson got permission to build a fortified house from Duke Alfred or Duke of or Albert the Duke of Bavaria. It was built as a square with sides of some 28 meters and entrance at its north side in between two heavy round projecting towers. The residential wings on the three other sides enclosed the race courtyard. There probably was a square keep at this east corner. The thickness of the walls of this keep and the outer walls of the castle vary from 2.7 to, till, till 3 meters. The eastern tower near the entrance gate had a pit prison. The proud castle of Lord Arnett was heavily damaged as a result of the flood of St. Elizabeth in 1421. Its rebuilding started half a century later, in which the castle was significantly altered. During, during that, the outer walls were cut out on the inside, which reduced their thickness from 3 to 1.2 meters to gain space. From these 15th century restorations, not much remained because on April 7, 1573, Dawson Castle was besieged and taken by Spanish troops under command by Nicolas Anjara Basta during the 80 Years' War. The siege severely damaged the castle, especially its northwest corner. Oh my god. This is so itchy, bro. Sorry, gang. Sorry, guys. For some reason, my face is too itchy. In 1607, the castle was sold to Lord Walraven, Baron of Gahent, for florins of 40,000 florins. Oh my god. Sorry, folks. Lord Walraven partially rebuilt the castle. He didn't rebuild the northwestern tower, but did build an arcade around the courtyard. Due to financial needs, Lord Walraven sold Dussen in 1622 Eduard Jacob van Axel from Alkmaar. Until the 20th century, the castle remained in the possession of his descendants. During the 18th century and the 19th century, the owners of Dussen Castle didn't reside there, but in their properties in the southern Netherlands, present-day Belgium. This caused the castle to fall in disrepair, but also kept it from drastic renovations which would have destroyed its original appearance, as was the case with a lot of other Dutch castles in those days. In 1901, the castle was handed over by the owners to a religious order whose nuns resided in Dussen Castle until 1920. After that, the castle stood empty for 4 years. It was bought by the Suringar family from Coudeker, from Coudeker. An eccentric female member of this family lived in the castle until her death in 1931. During night, she had herself guarded by 6 male residents of the village of Dusen, in order that her donkey slept in a tower room while the slept in the arcade. Oh, wow. In 1931, the castle was put up for public auction, but because of but, but because of a demolition ban, no buyers were found. In 1935, the castle was bought by the local authority of Dusen for 15,000 florins. They started to restore the castle to make it usable as a town hall. These restorations were undone by heavy shelling in 1944. Both towers were badly damaged and one wing collapsed. From 1947 until 1953, Dussen Castle was again rebuilt. At present, the castle is being used as a town hall. Yeah, the Durin Castle now is used as a town hall. You can actually visit the town hall yourself. It's a castle town hall. It's a mini town hall. Which is very nice in my opinion. Who's that? Could either be one of the presidents, though I'm not sure. The ceiling, we have an empty ceiling. Oh, and here's Dussen Castle in 1647 in another sketch. Oh, next castle. How much do we have? Durstede Castle. Durstede Castle, locally known as Kasteel Durstede, is situated in a town park in the town of Wijk by Durstede, in the Utrecht province in the Netherlands.